man.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are back again for another series review. This is coming straight from Disney Plus. This is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and I mean exactly that, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, because this is the humble beginnings of Peter Parker yet again in a very different take. The way that they handled the style for this is an amalgam of CG, 2D design rendered over kind of like a comic book strip come to life. Now, over the years, we've seen all different forms of Spider-Man, and there's been some amazing ones, and I mean, some of the recent ones that have come out in the theaters. Speaking of No Way Home, speaking of Spider-Verse, have been excellent. The question has always been, was this a series, since it was introduced 2 years ago, something that was going to work? And you know what? I think it might have actually just worked. But I have here company. I've got Busy Braun from Busy Braun Reacts. What's going on, man?
What's up, man? What's up?
Hey, so we're decked out in black. There's not a underlying reason for that because this is a non-spoiler review. But we will be talking about, why don't we make this a non-spoiler? The episode's already out already, so let's go ahead and
Yeah.
just get into it. Like, let's make it fair game. So we're talking spoilers, guys. Venom showed. I'm joking. The symbiote did show up in the very first episode. It was very interesting, engaging, because Doctor Strange literally was chasing them down, and we don't know where Doctor Strange came from. But let's go ahead and kind of get into the brass knucks on this. As far as the art style in this, as far as the action, and even how they handle transitions, what did you think about the style on this one, Busy? Like, did you think this was something that worked for you? Like, was this something that was engaging enough that you're like, oh, okay, I'll keep seeing this? Because it's very different. Like, it looks very stylistic, and it flows kind of like CG over 2D animation. But I was curious your perspective.
So, I feel like they kind of tried to give it that retro look, but at the same time, it kind of reminds me of two kind of like animations kind of mashed together, and
Mm-hmm.
that's both kind of what they did with X-Men '97, and then on top of that, the old Spider-Man show that I think it was on like MTV back in the day. It
Yes,
kind
that
of
was one of
has
my
like a
favorites.
yeah, it has kind of like a mash in my opinion of both of that because they kind of had the 3D vibe, but also kind of vintage comic book vibe, which I really really dig. And I know it's a little wonky to some people, but me personally, I think it's a really unique take, and we have had so many animated versions of Spider-Man, so it's really cool to have another version that's kind of different, if you will. Not necessarily just the story, but the way the art kind of is. And we know that Disney has a budget to do what they want to do, so I'm sure due to this 3D look, we're gonna have a lot of really cool animated say fight sequences, if you will. But there's still a lot more to talk about. There is a lot to talk about and to unpack with these two episodes that they gave us.
Yeah, I'm giving Busy props. I normally never do that, but yeah, the 2003 Spider-Man that initially came out on MTV is about roughly 13 episodes, very adult themed, but at the same that time, the style of it was so engaging, funny, and exciting. It was very different, and this is very different as well. It's not to say this is a continuation of that story, because it's very much still the infancy level parts of Peter's journey, and it's also very different because in this version, the spider that bites Peter comes from a different place. Well, we don't know necessarily where it comes from, but it seems as though it came from literally a different place, which takes luxuries from Spider Verse. So I think that there are certain elements in this that is fusing everything together. And I also wanted to ask you, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring it up now. Um, is where in continuity does this take place? Because I don't know if this is canon. Honestly, I don't know if this version of Spider-Man is a different version, literally. Like this takes place not just in a different time, but this is not our Tom Holland Spider-Man that is connected to 616. Only reason why I asked that question is because when I think that might have been Benedict Cumberbatch's version of Doctor Strange, but when he came through the portal and he kind of looked, he's like, we're not supposed to be here.
Yeah,
And I was like, did he come from a different universe? and he was tracking down one of the symbiotes, and it just happened to be that this merger. But it's just weird because you've got characters that we've never seen before in this. And I mean, case in point, you look at the second episode, Asha. I don't think Asha has been introduced within Wakanda in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was Shuri initially, right? You got Amadeus Cho. You got, of course, Harry Osborn is
It would
very.
have even been cool if it was Riri Williams, you know, like it would have been cool to have a character, you know, especially with how they kind of had her in Wakanda Forever, someone who was familiar with Wakanda tech, kind of she's like, "Oh yeah, I've been to Wakanda." But then as soon as, you know, she started speaking, I'm like, "Okay, that, you know, accent is clearly this is different. I'm excited to see what they're doing with that." And
Right.
then she comes out and says, "Yeah, I'm from Wakanda." And I'm like, "This is a big jump because like I'm pretty sure at this point Wakanda's still kind of like, you know, like Wakanda's a third world, like it's still it's people know about it, but you know, for a genius to come out of there, I feel like there would be some questions being
Yeah,
drawn like that, right?
yeah, because our Peter would have mentioned it before,
Yeah,
like yeah, oh, I've met and interacted with. So this, I think that this
but
is a very different.
I think that's kind of the important thing that we need to acknowledge because everything that we're seeing from where he's introduced at that internship, that's where things kind of break off.
Mhm.
So that's from episode 2. That
Yeah,
everything that's episode 2. Everything prior to like everything in episode 1 is where it's kind of like, okay, this can be like what maybe Tom Holland might have went through. This is where we kind of draw that question. But the only difference is instead of it being a Tony Stark at the end of the episode, it was Norman Osborn. So that's where things kind of start, you know, going on different paths because instead of it being, of course, Tony, it's Norman who offers him the scholarship. So that's where Peter ends up instead of being flown to where is it, Germany? He's, you know, given a paid internship. So it's that's where he ends up meeting Amadeus Cho. That's where he ends up meeting the Wakandan and ends up meeting these other characters. So that's different from Tom Holland's version because Tom Holland was never in a position where he was given this internship, so he was never able to meet these characters.
yeah,
So him not bringing up these characters is because it's as simple as him never being in that position to meet these characters. But everything before him walking into that house with the music playing and everything, which again was a direct copy of Civil War, which was so amazingly done. Animation, everything they got shot for shot, music. That literally had me giggling like a child in my work office. Like it was one of the coolest things I feel like we've seen in quite some time. There was no cameo involved. It was just straight art, you know, and I feel like they
yeah,
handled that perfectly. But um, it's just everything from that point, from the house visit on, us as viewers, we know what happens, you know. But
mhm,
everything before that, we've had to leave it up to the imagination because they never showed Uncle Ben die. They never showed Peter get bit by the spider. So being put in the situation, where us as viewers were supposed to think that maybe this is actually what happened to Tom. But you know, it's just very interesting. But for him not mentioning all of the stuff that's happened in episode 2 is just simply because he never made it that far. Tom Holland just his character just took a left instead of taking that right, if that makes any sense.
yeah, and it's strictly because he took. We don't know whether or not it's because he saved Harry, but I kind of feel
Yeah.
like his dad knows. And I mean, well, at this point now, Peter's also exposed. Like he is outed
Hmm.
to Norman. So I don't know the ramifications of it, but I do think that you're right. I think that there's this pivot that happened because even down to when May was taking Peter to school, he had like the Tony Stark Iron Man suit, like as
Oh, it's like a
I don't know
dash.
what
Like
you would
yeah,
call it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought that was so on the money. And then even like his program that he's doing in the second one, he was talking about self-sufficient energy. I was like, are they going to introduce Dr. Octopus? Is I was kind of like, where are we going with this? But then he kind of was like, oh, like the arc reactor, and I was like, oh, this is
And it's funny because I want to say that this is going to be really interesting, even if they do go this route for Tom Holland's character. Because in my opinion, these version of the characters that we're seeing, even though they're not like you know like really involved heavily like in the world that we see with Tom Holland's character, like I'm pretty sure Norman Osborn isn't really like a big thing, so maybe his character is not really prominent in that universe. But as simple as what we saw with Dr. Connors.
Mm,
Like, it's not the Dr. Connors we're familiar with. It's
nope.
it's a woman. Like, I think it was a really cool. It really caught me off guard. Like, I think they called her like Camilla Connors or something to that extent. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And to me, I think it's really cool because, again, No Way Home, he's introduced to all these villains that he's never even bumped into. So to kind of add a mix to it where it's like he can bump into another version of Dr. Connors and he can be like, oh wait, this isn't the same version. So he might or she might not go crazy. And then of course that can end up being an issue later on. So it kind of opens the doors for later on for them to kind of like test the waters and see if they can actually bring this version of Dr. Connor, say, like, to live action, for an example. And I feel like this is kind of a cool way to kind of like test the waters in a way. So I do like that.
Yeah, I just don't. I'm just confused whether or not this is Sony's trajectory or if this is Marvel's, because this is still a Sony based character. Like Marvel does not own Spider-Man.
But I'm pretty sure they own the TV rights. They don't own movie rights, but they have television rights, which is why Disney has been popping out Spider-Man shows for the last like 10 years on like
Mm,
Disney XD, because they have the rights to the television, but they don't have rights to the movies.
No,
So
that
yes,
actually adds
yeah.
up. That actually really does add up. I think I wanted to bring it up because I'm pretty sure you guys that are watching are just as confused as we are. It's like, are these characters going to show up live action? Are these characters going to be see? Because I mean, I'm gonna use the first episode as a really good pivot.
Mhm.
Peter goes and gets bit by a spider that we don't even know is radioactive. It could have come from a different world. It could have been a freaking Venom
Mhm.
spider. We don't know.
And that's why I think things are a little different from like maybe our version of Peter, because I don't know
Yeah.
if that's necessarily what happened. And that's the one thing that I don't like, that we never got the origin of.
Yeah, but moving from that point, he's a good Spider-Man. He's doing all the things, and he's also very smart and intellectual, but he's not being bullied either. Like, he's at a school that's different than the school he was supposed to go to. He didn't make it to Midtown because Midtown got destroyed. So he's went to a whole different school. With this school, it's a whole different group as well. So it's a character like Lonnie. I thought Lonnie was Flash Thompson. Lo and behold, Lonnie is actually really smart. He's dating the girl that Peter really wants to be with, and yet he's cool with Peter. And it's so interesting because from that point, and this is where I think it'd be a really good segue. They show a moment where him and Lonnie kind of connect right before they're going home, and Lonnie kind of just moves his head down, and he just kind of walks down the street. And to paint a picture for you guys, this is something that honestly is something I would have to go through walking down the street. And he just kind of goes and walks down the street, gets on the subway. A lady goes on the subway with either her granddaughter
Yeah.
or her child, and the child kind of try to interact, and the lady just kind of moves the child over, and Lonnie's just sitting there. And then he's just trying to walk down the street. Here's a lot of commotion going on, and he sees a siren come on. Siren is coming up behind him, and he knows for a fact instinctively he's watching him. So it's like the stress that he's processing in his head, they telegraph in less than, I want to say, 2 minutes of just watching him go down. And that is so interesting because I wouldn't have expected something like that in a show like this, but they just do it, and they do it very seamlessly. They do a really good job of that with X-Men 97. They did a good job with that, of course, with Black Lightning that used to come on back in the day. But for them to do that very quickly, like, you immediately connect with Lonnie. You immediately connect with him, even when he gets home. Like, he's talking to his mom's like, hey, like, I talked to, my homeroom teacher
Mhm.
about like your car, and I think this is what it is. I'm going to go work on it.
And
This
he's
is something that
juggling
I
everything.
would do,
Yeah,
right?
he's juggling everything.
And I grew up like that. So it's really dope to actually see, and they do it in a way that doesn't feel too forced, and it just connects with the character, who he is. Do the same exact thing with the character that we've seen in another Marvel show, Nico. Nico from Runaways is in this show. She's best friends with Peter, which is crazy because that's actually Marvel Comics accurate. But does that mean Cloak and Dagger is going to show up in the show? I don't know, but when they use her as a character, they show different sides of her with the dialogue. This is written really tight. It's written really well because the things that are coming out of her mouth is a lot of projection. It's a lot of encouragement towards Peter. She seems really connected to Peter. She might even really like Peter, but she also might like other things as well, and other people that look like her. And it's just the way that they write it, it's just done really well. So I was curious your perspective on the writing and how they kind of handled it in this first 2 episodes.
So like right from the gun, it's very different, from what we've seen before. I mean, even again, adult themes. I can't really remember if they've even used words like hell in some of the other shows. But I feel like here it's just been really interesting to know that it kind of like is piggybacking or kind of we have a lot of different timelines, a lot of different universes, and some are very different, some are very similar. And I feel like the one thing that makes this really exciting is because how similar it started to what we've seen or what we saw in Civil War and Homecoming, and to see it kind of like differ it's been kind of cool. It's just kind of one long what if story. What if Norman Osborn found Peter first? So it's to me it's just really interesting because it's like what could have been. It's like a lot of people were, when we watch movies, we're sitting here and we're just like, oh, this movie would have been better if they did this, and now they have an opportunity to be like, hey, like this movie, like Spider-Man could have been cool if they had this character instead of this character. And now they're just throwing up a bunch of new things at us and new things that we haven't seen yet in the MCU. And it's making it really entertaining to kind of and make it really easy to be invested in, like a character such as Nico or characters such as Doctor Strange interacting with Peter Parker that early on in the story. It's just things that we never got. So it's just making things really cool to be or easy to be invested in. So I am impressed with the writing so far, and the fact that we're only 2 episodes in, it just really makes me excited for more.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I was worried about this show is I was worried it's going to be like villain of the week. Like I thought it was going to be cheesy, to be honest with you. Like I feel like the way they stylized it and then the way that they kind of pitched it, at least because I've never seen any of the trailers. I only remember the original concept art. And I was like, I don't know about this. And I was just really worried it was going to be really corny. I really felt like they were just going to redo and resell the same exact packaging, so to speak.
Yeah.
But they hit all the core values. Like there was a moment that Peter Parker, I don't think any Spider-Man incarnation that I can remember had Peter acknowledge to his aunt, look, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've been my ride or die. I couldn't have made it this far without you. I couldn't be here without you. Like even like we've seen, Peter emote, but we've never had him directly acknowledge her. And she just breaking down. Mm-hmm. And she's trying to keep it strong for him. And I was like, that's so freaking dope. And even down to Harry getting mugged and getting saved by Peter. And then he's like, yo, I can cash app you something. And like, he's like, nah, dog, I'm good. And it threw Harry off so bad because he was like, so you saving me for nothing? Mm-hmm. Like, and it's just like that small, subtle little thing in it. And you could tell that Harry was never going to forget it. But the one that really broke me was the thief. Was that the second episode or was that the first episode? I can't really remember.
The thief was the second episode, I believe.
When just nonchalantly, like Peter
being Peter, yeah.
He went and brought the lady back, brought the money back to the store owner, and store owner was kind of looking, and then the girl's just crying. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Like I was behind on money. I didn't know what I could do. And like Peter was kind of just like, I mean, it's up to you, but I mean, maybe we can kind of cut her a break or whatever. And I just thought that was so human. And that's one of the things that we've seen a lot of flashiness and a lot of gadgets and a lot of like struggle for Peter. but we haven't seen a lot of inspirational moments. I think that they've hit some things in this that we haven't seen Spider-Man in a really long time. Because even when, you know, he just kind of tearing off the webbing off of her, and he said, "Please don't make me regret it." She paused, she looked at him, "I promise." And I was like, that's so freaking dope, bro. And I
Yeah.
just thought this joke was gonna be corny, and it just not. It's not.
Yeah.
So it throws me off because I'm actually second to Batman. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. I don't broadcast that at all, but it's true. And it's just I'm excited for the possibilities of what this show could be. But I'm more happy that the fact that it's just written well enough for me to want to keep going. But yeah, I feel like I'm ranting more than I wanted to.
No, go crazy, bro.
Did you have any closing thoughts and
So,
worries or concerns or anything?
nah, I think it's I don't want to say concerns yet. I mean, realistically, I'm happy with what we got. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and nitpick because the fact that I will say, like, I was initially excited for this show because it was gonna be set up as a prequel to Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Like, this is something that we, didn't get to see because we kind of just dove into the action in Civil War. But when they announced and they were slowly announcing, like, yeah, no, this is gonna be something completely different. Like, this is a whole different universe. This is kind of like a little what if scenario. It took some time to get used to because I felt like we were promised one thing and kind of got something else. And realistically, it was kind of, a little upsetting. But I will say, ultimately, especially sitting down and watching these 2 episodes, I'm satisfied with what we got. It's been almost 4 years since we've got No Way Home. So that's pretty crazy to say, but realistically, just to get some Spider-Man content, it's pretty cool. And I know we got Spider-Man 2 not too long ago, and of course, Across the Spider-Verse. But to get just another origin story, even though it's been told a lot of times, this is very different. So I'm really excited for this. And again, the fact that we are like slowly getting back all of our characters. Disney's getting all these characters back, and this is a television show, so we are going to be getting a lot of guest characters, and that's something that I am really, really looking forward to.
Yeah, I think the last thing I was gonna say is that I'm scared. I'm scared that in a world where we got a show like X-Men 97 and a show at this point now like this that looks promising, our geekiness, right, is going to want to have these shows reflect present day live action. And so
Yep.
my brain is already going, oh crap, Secret Wars is coming. All this is gonna merge together. It's all this stuff is gonna just merge together, man. Like we're gonna get Miles Morales. We're gonna get this some kind of way. We're gonna get X-Men 97. And I'm scared that like I'm letting myself overthink. And I think that I just recommend everybody to do what I'm gonna do is just enjoy the ride, enjoy
Ride
the
the wave.
wave, ride the wave. I'm doing the same exact thing with My Adventures of Superman with DC because as amazing as that is, I know that what James Gunn is doing with Superman is not going to be a continuation of that story, right? But with this, because there's so many different Marvel characters that could and will show up, the actual voice actors as well, it's hard not to do. And so I just want to make sure I acknowledge the elephant in the room. Are you feeling the same way, Busy, or are you?
Yeah, like I mean, at this point, I'm just I think I've had enough time to kind of understand that this is not going to be, connected to like the main thing, but realistically, they've made it really clear that everything in this universe does exist in some form. So even if it's a little peek and beyond the Spider-Verse or just something crazy, like I'm going to be satisfied with it. I'm going to be cool. I don't expect it to be told in live action, but I think the fact that we're getting the show at all is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So I'll take it as a win.
yeah. But closing thoughts. Where do you rate the series so far? If you had to go from A to F.
I'm gonna give it an A minus. My very popular vote. It's not perfect by any means. And again, it's only been 2 episodes, so I hate to rate, like just get too excited about it. But I do think that there's a room for improvement. But I do think that they really, are going for it. Like they're going crazy. So I'm really impressed. I will say that.
Yeah, I think that the way that they wrote this was done really well, and I think that the inclusion of the MCU, you feel it. You feel like this is a part of a bigger world, and we've barely scratched the surface of what that looks like.
Mhm.
Especially making the bold move of including like a symbiote already. And then also the projection of like Doctor Strange coming from a different world. I think it's actually really dope. But I think that I don't necessarily like the art style personally.
Okay.
Um and only reason why, because I keep going back and forth with how it looks. Like I appreciate it from a comic book standpoint, from a comic book strip standpoint, but then there are moments where if the characters are not doing like a movement or doing something like acrobatic, I don't know if it feels depreciated. Like it feels like you got like one thing and it's got a little bit of depth, but then it just kind of like looks choppy. But then you realize it's not. It's just done that way. It's an artistic choice. But I also am very much so, unfortunately, a purist. Like I love this original. Like I still think this is A1. Like you should have went down this road, but this isn't for me. This is still at the end of the day an A for me. And I'm very surprised how much I actually really enjoyed these first 2 episodes. So I'm gonna be watching it every week now. There's another show y'all got me on for Marvel. So congratulations, Disney Plus. And until Daredevil comes in March, so a new day, it's a new dawn. But do you think that the new Spider-Man movie is gonna be called A Brand New Day?
Too early, man. I'm not.
Anyway, I'm joking. But Busy, where can everybody find your content, man?
You can find me Busy Brown everywhere, and then doing reviews over here on Team JBS.
Yes, sir. We have a lot of content coming you guys' way on TikTok and YouTube and other socials. A lot of interviews, a lot of crazy interviews, and more series reviews than you guys can be ready for. So if you enjoy a little bit of Invincible, if you enjoy a little bit of Night Agent, if you enjoy a little bit of Reacher, you're gonna get some content. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one, everybody. Peace, people.